That's a big question, and it would probably be easier if I kind of start at the beginning for this one.
Priyanka Punja,
first female guest on Desire to Inspire podcast.
History has been made there.
And it doesn't matter what that random auntie says or what that random auntie thinks about your role and how long it's taking to get a job.
To me and to the people who look at your profile, they would think, oh, this is what Priyanka definitely wanted to do because she speaks so passionately about this topic. So was it planned? Was it figured out?
I'd say it was partly planned.
LinkedIn is not as corporate a platform as people think it is.
That's really surprised me.
Just start searching for people who work in the industry that you're trying to get into. You'll get a list of names and what they do. Just drop them a message. Just say, hi. I think that's something I'm learning about myself because it's definitely surprised me.
I probably applied to at least 800 and received countless rejections. The world doesn't stop turning because you've failed something. Feel that rejection, like embody it, feel angry about it, feel frustrated. It's normal, and I think it's important to acknowledge how you feel. We probably wouldn't have even connected without LinkedIn in itself, so I think that's a testament to say just how far it can take you. I mean, the worst thing that can happen on LinkedIn is...
Desire to Inspire crew, well done. We made some good progress. My first 3 podcast episodes are ranked 3rd, 4th and 5th as in highest YouTube videos, highest viewed YouTube videos on my channel ever. Subscribe to be a part of a journey and for future motivation. This is a very interesting episode. Let's get just into it.
Priyanka, you are the first ever female guest on Desire to Inspire podcast. That's so much history which is there. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited for the week ahead. The weather's getting warmer, so that's always something to be excited about. But otherwise, I'm doing very well. How about you?
That's great to hear. And I'm doing decent as well. This podcast is what I really wanted to do, this episode. And yeah, please, could you tell us about yourself, a bit about your journey, just to the viewers who are listening right now?
Okay, so hi, I'm Priyanka. I have a background in geography. Then I did a master's in population health. Then it took around 18 months to find a job that kind of aligned with my values. And yeah, that's kind of sums me up in 3 sentences, I guess. So what kind of drove me behind that was trying to help people. And I think everyone can relate to poor health. You know, everyone knows what it's like to have a cold and how inconvenient that is at the best of times. But on a bigger scale, I wanted to help people. And I think when you work in health, you'll have an impact on at least one person's life, whether that's very kind of personal when you're having a one-to-one chat, or on a much larger scale where you're working on projects that's going to have a really big impact on a huge number of people. But I think whatever kind of direction you go in within health, you'll always have a positive impact on somebody. And I think that's kind of what drove me in that direction.
You spoke a bit about selfless service, which I could listen to there. And one tradition just of this show is to ask the guest just about their burning desire. So I asked Jordan, my first ever podcast guest, and he gave a just incredible answer. And I wanted to ask you, what is your burning desire, and is it linked a bit to that selfless service and just supporting different people who need the support and the assistance as well? So what is your burning desire, and has it changed?
So that's a big question, and it would probably be easier if I kind of start at the beginning for this one. So during my A-levels, we had a module on health, and it was talking about health inequalities and improving health outcomes, looking at kind of global health, so how different countries have different healthcare systems and deal with different kind of conditions. So poorer countries will have more infectious diseases, whereas richer countries like the UK and the US will have more non-communicable diseases, so things like diabetes and obesity. And I've always kind of liked that kind of global perspective of health, and it was really interesting to see how it differed between different places. And my undergrad in geography had lots of health modules as well, so I was able to kind of follow that path, I guess, and explore it in different ways. And I think what links geography to health is trying to understand why certain diseases exist in a specific space. And that's kind of what drew me towards it, because it's like, even in the UK, you've got things like the postcode lottery, which can really determine the kind of healthcare treatment you get, your quality of life massively, along with other factors like socioeconomic factors. And yeah, so I've really enjoyed that, and I thought, okay, where do I go next with this information that I know about myself? And that seems like a very obvious theme throughout. So I decided to do a master's in population health, again, really trying to understand health in a UK context this time. So kind of zooming in instead of kind of looking at the bigger picture, and trying to understand the barriers the NHS deals with on a daily basis, quality of care depending on where you live, up north or in the south. And it just became apparent that actually health is a very big part of our lives. And for example, the built environment can really help us to maintain positive kind of mental and physical well-being. So it was more about trying to understand how different aspects of my interests fitted together with health. I think, again, with geography, it is about looking at your environment, your surroundings, and seeing how it all fits together. And that led me to do a dissertation in green spaces and looking at how green spaces can facilitate our mental well-being and physical well-being. If you think about the impact green spaces has on levels of anxiety, stress, and depression, it's a really good way to regulate your emotions. So again, that's a classic example of how our environment, our built environment, essentially can actually reduce poor mental well-being. And again, green spaces are great for physical activity. You know, you've got like those gyms that you get in the middle of the parks and stuff, again, which are great for physical activity. And my dissertation was looking at how we can make green spaces more accessible to everyone, not just, you know, people, able-bodied people, or children. Or it was really trying to understand how it can help facilitate community activity, which again is great for cohesion and battling things like loneliness. So yeah, that's kind of where all of this started, and like my interests kind of follow through with that.
Hey there, first stoppage. Building a community is so important, just in real life and in social media. Currently, I am building this one here, and I love you to be a part just of the community. So follow and send me a message. Let's get right back into this episode.
Yeah, that's kind of all I had to say about that.
That's a great answer, and I really like that mission you were going towards, because it's a very unique one, especially in the South Asian community as well. And I've just looked through all of your experience, and I noticed you're a patient partnership coordinator and a mental health advocate, and your mission is to working to diversify in health research and to tackle health inequality. And I've just looked through all of your experience. You have lots of experience in speaking, in charity work, in volunteering, and I want to ask, those experiences and your past experiences, do they contribute to you getting further in making that impact, or have they contributed towards that, or will your future ones contribute more towards making that and just going more towards your burning desire and fulfilling it?
So I started volunteering with Amnesty International back in 2018, and I kind of still do to this day. So for the last 6 years, that's what I've been up to. That one was a bit odd because originally I started doing that one because I thought I wanted a career in human rights. Again, when I was doing my geography A level, there was a unit on human rights, and I really enjoyed that. And health is still a big part of it. It just made sense to maybe get my foot in the door in a human rights organisation, and Amnesty International seemed like the best place to do that. It was a really good introduction to the charity sector and how it runs. So I was volunteering within the fundraising team, so I kind of understood, what the part and parcel of that. And I met some incredible people. I'm still friends with them to this day. It just gives you, I think for me, while I was there, it was really like, it fed the soul. As abstract as that may sound. It's one of those things where you feel like you're making a difference, and you can actively see how what you're doing is leading to something good. And everyone in that organisation has the same goal, which is to promote and support human rights and to advocate for them all over the world. And I don't think you can ever put a price on that, where every single one of you is working towards exactly the same thing. There's some kind of power within that. And it was really nice to be part of that process. And off the back of that, they also gave me another volunteering role as a merchandise and stockroom volunteer, where that also involved kind of project managing their merchandise, which was held at the head office, and then kind of shipping it off to all the bookshops they have across the UK. And what that kind of helped me to understand was the full circle process. So different parts of the fundraising team and seeing how they all fit together in different volunteering roles, which was quite interesting. Especially because you've just started uni, you haven't really experienced any kind of real life work, if that makes sense. And it wasn't your standard volunteering role. It wasn't sort of in a charity shop as such. It was in their head office, like you were working alongside other teams. And you had access to loads of people within different departments within the charity, which was really nice to speak to them about what they do. It was good exposure. It was good work experience, and to this day, I still use a lot of what I learned as part of my interviews, and to give examples about teamwork when I project manage something, problem solving. So it's been very useful and very instrumental in kind of getting me where I am today. I did decide not to go for a career in human rights in the end, but I just really enjoyed the people. I enjoyed working with people that had the same passion, the same interest, the same drive to do good in the world. And I think that really helped me just kind of steer my career ambitions towards the charity sector or the public sector, because again, it's the same thing, all working towards a similar goal, which is really nice. And you will always have an impact on somebody's life. And again, I don't think you can ever put a price on that. I also volunteer with Sehat, which is a charity looking to reduce suicide rates, specifically among the Punjabi community. And I thought I joined that one because it was specific to this particular community. I mean, I'm not Punjabi, but again, it was really nice to work alongside people who cared about the same kind of thing, working towards the same goal. And I think, it's very wholesome. It's probably the best way to describe the charity sector. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of creativity that goes into it, especially when, you've got reduction in funding, or you're struggling to maintain a certain service because of reduction in funding. So you've got to think on your feet and learn how to navigate situations like that. And you get, I think you just get a lot of experience that way, especially as a uni student. You're learning to think outside the box, to solve very practical real life problems that again are really good for interviews moving forward. And it also honestly just shows that you're a bit more proactive with your time.
yes, you're volunteering, no, you don't get paid, but what you get in return, I think, is invaluable as a student as well. So yeah, I would highly recommend volunteering if you can, if you're in a position to, because what you will gain on a personal level in terms of it being very wholesome, but also what you get in a practical sense, you can actually use it to support your career and professional growth. So it's a bit of a two-in-one, I think.
One problem which has been more in the past was diversity, especially in the workforce. But I think nowadays there's more employers who build a more diverse and like inclusive workforce. You can see that in job applications, in job descriptions, they tell you like right at the end to fill in that survey, like gender, culture, and so on. And there's more of a push to improving that in these times. And I read a LinkedIn survey, and I wanted to share these stats to you, which are more like inclusive teams contribute to 35% more productivity, and they make better decisions 87% like of the time. And this shows there's more diversity in the workforce, and it shows by having a workforce with different perspectives and viewpoints and backgrounds that brings the productivity side out and most of the creative side out as well. However, you mentioned a gap in the South Asian community within your route, the mental and public, that kind of route. And I partly resonate with it because I'm striving to become a motivational speaker with a daughter, and not just within my culture, but I don't think there's much motivational speakers with a daughter. And what I wanted to ask is, how are you dealing with that gap in the South Asian community within your route? And how are you dealing with this problem, with this obstacle, with this challenge?
Okay, that's another very big question. So when I started as a patient partnership coordinator, it became apparent that one of the biggest issues that they were having is trying to get ethnic minorities to participate in the research projects that they were working on. And what this means is the outcome of research projects may not be applicable to ethnic minorities because their lived experiences haven't been captured in the research itself. So it hasn't informed the direction that research would take. And everyone's experience of a health condition is very different. So it's very important to try and get a representation within health research to ensure that the outcome of that research can impact as many people as possible. And I am the only ethnic minority on my team. To put that into perspective, our team there's about 12 people, and I'm the only brown person. So it's very clear that we need to start thinking about diversifying certain areas where there is a lack of diversity, especially when you're trying to reach a diverse population. Because I think within health in particular, there's a lot of mistrust between researchers and medical professionals and patients and the general public. And if you're trying to reach an ethnic minority community and they can't see themselves represented within sort of the research or a medical professional, if that makes sense, then they're less likely to want to interact with them. It's a little bit like you're being like you being an ethnic minority, but then you go and move to a very white area and you just feel like you kind of just stick out like a sore thumb. You may not incur any hostility or anything, but you can just feel that it's different, as opposed to being in London where there's so much diversity and you can like accustom to that environment very easily. So we need to start thinking about how we can break down these barriers and build trust within these communities. And actually, one of the biggest issues that I found when I was doing my undergraduate dissertation, I was looking at vaccine hesitancy. I was looking at newspaper articles and I was comparing them to Mumsnet comments. And I was looking specifically at the MMR controversy back in the early 2000s. And when I was looking through Mumsnet comments, a lot of ethnic minorities were talking about previous health scares that happened years ago. And I'm talking like 50, 60 years ago from that point. And we're using that to justify not being vaccinated. So it's very clear that a lot of this mistrust is passed down from generation to generation, which can affect so many people. And we need to get researchers to understand this. We need to get healthcare professionals to understand this, because the slightest barrier patients face when accessing medical healthcare can really put them off from interacting with that world at all. So if you've gone to your GP and they've been really dismissive of your concerns, then you're probably not going to go back. But then you could have symptoms of a very serious condition that needs urgent care. But if you don't seek that help, you're not going to get it. So then, again, that just feeds into poorer health outcomes, health inequality, and it just spirals from there. And it seems like ethnic minorities tend to be more worse off because they're not being captured in research, because they're being dismissed, because the health system is not understanding their needs, their lifestyles, and even their language. I think there's a lot of jargon when it comes to medical research, and again, that just creates a bigger barrier. And ethnic minorities have, conversed in a wider range of languages. If health information is not translated into those languages, again, you've got a language barrier. And it just, instead of creating cohesion, it's just pulling people apart, and it just, again, it spirals from there. And as an ethnic minority who has gone through a very grueling process of even getting this far, and still is seeing this issue of a lack of diversity within health research in the wider health space, I kind of see it as an opportunity to kind of give ethnic minorities a voice in a space where it currently doesn't exist. And I face a lot of backlash to get to this point. A lot of, not many South Asians do geography. It's just not a done subject. Loads of people used to say, oh, why are you going to do geography? You're not going to get a job with that. And then I went on to do my master's in population health. And again, I had people say to me, what are you going to do with that? Like, what does that mean? And it didn't come from a place of wanting to understand. It came from a place of judgment straight away. And that was from ethnic minorities themselves, which is what's really interesting, because you're trying to access a space where we're not represented. But when you try to do that, your own kind of community or groups of people are against you doing that, when actually what you're trying to do, it will help them in the long run. And so, yeah, I did face a lot of adversity in trying to get where I am. But I think, attitudes are changing. And the more people that do something that they actually enjoy, rather than following the general consensus, oh, you'll only get a job if you do law or engineering or maths or finance, or the very typical stereotypical Indian subjects, I guess. The more people that kind of follow their dreams or really dig deep and say, no, I want to do this because this is my interest, this is the direction I'm going. You kind of stick to your guns in that sense, and you find a way to get where you want to be. It can inspire others to do the same, and also it can make their journey a lot easier, because one of the barriers I faced that I really struggled with was I found it really hard to network with people because they didn't look like me. So automatically there was another barrier I had to overcome. It's sort of like saying, if there's loads of ethnic minorities in finance, for example. So if you wanted to go into the finance sector, it wouldn't be too difficult to kind of seek out somebody who's probably like you and had gone through a very similar journey to then have that conversation about how to get there. Whereas for me, I didn't see representation at all. So trying to seek out those people was actually very difficult. But I did reach out to loads of people who, from
weren't just ethnic minorities, but it was kind of, you do feel a little bit more imposter syndrome in the sense that you can't see yourself in those roles, so you shouldn't go for those roles, if that makes sense. So it is about trying to navigate those kinds of feelings and just stick to your guns and say, yes, this is going to be hard, but the returns of, once you get there, that's where you can make the real change, and actually future generations can see representation in those roles and will say, oh, but this person's doing it, so I can do it too. And then it kind of follows on from there. And I've got here, and I want to be able to use where I am now to create further change, not just in the health space, not just in health research specifically, but looking at the bigger picture and saying, oh, I'm an ethnic minority, I did a geography degree, I have a master's in population health, and I've got a job. If I can do it, then anyone can do it. And you've just got to stick to your guns and just keep pushing through. It does take longer than strictly necessary, unfortunately, but actually once you get there, it's well worth the wait. It took me 18 months to get my job, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
That's a really good point you mentioned about judgment and imposter syndrome, especially within your own community. So I wanted to ask, has that changed? Has that like shifted more now? And how have you contributed to that? Because I know you've had lots of roles, and I'm sure you made that sort of like impact there. But I wanted to ask, has there been more people being supportive, especially within that community now?
I think it really depends on the person that you're speaking to. I think if you're speaking to somebody who's open to understanding why you want to do what you're doing, then the conversation is much easier to navigate, because they're not coming from a place of judgment straight away. It's not sort of like they're shutting down the conversation. Whereas if they're coming from a point of, they're being open to listening to what you want to do and why you care about this, then yeah, it's a much easier conversation. And actually, I think people are becoming a little more accepting of difference, and that's in different forms. So the more they see people who are different, the more, and that's with anyone. Like, I always encourage anyone who's starting uni, particularly, speak to people who are different from you, because you will learn so much. And I think with the Asian or South Asian narrative of, going for specific kind of career goals, it becomes very narrow-minded, and that becomes all you can see. Whereas actually, the more people you speak to in different professions or with different interests, you can actually see a lot more as possible. But I think it's down to the person being open to new experiences, or being open to listening to people who are different, who do have different goals and different interests. And that doesn't mean to say they've got to be the same as yours. You're totally entitled to take yourself where you want to go and have your own interests. That's fine. But be open to conversations that involve different ideas, different perspectives, because you'll learn so much more. And I think I still face a lot of like, oh, it took you 18 months to get a job because you have a geography degree. And I hear that all the time. And I don't think that's true, because there are so many people with like finance degrees, or, just very like law, or like very normal degrees, and that have just as difficult a job hunt as someone like me with a less common degree. So, and in the job space, nobody really cares about your degree very much, mainly because more or less everyone's got one. So it's not a unique selling point, depending, of course, on how you choose to sell your degree. It's more about your experiences. What did you do outside your degree? So what projects were you part of? What did you volunteer? Did you have a part-time job? What things did you do alongside it that makes you different from somebody else? And also the job market at the moment is horrible. It's probably one of the worst times to be looking for a job. And that also fed into why it's probably taken me 18 months to land my first role in the first place. I really don't think it's down to my degree combinations or anything like that. I think you've just got to, I think the most important thing is to stick to your guns and really dig deep on your why. Because if you've got a solid why, you've got a solid direction, and you can start building a network that kind of supports that why, or who can relate to that why. And the more people you speak to, the more you'll realize it's possible. And again, that's what I would say to grads who are looking for jobs, or even students just generally, is again, just be open to having conversations with different people. And when it comes to networking, find people who work in that sector. And I wouldn't go specifically down to a particular role until a little bit further down the line, mainly because it's better to have a broader understanding of that industry, then slowly narrow your way to a specific role and then start looking for jobs with that role title. But even then, like, your first job within that industry it can be anything really, because it means you'd still be in the right place. And if you're in the right place, then you've got access to the right people where you can then network with them, and then you can decide where you want to go. I think it's right at the beginning, it's about getting your foot in the door. Even my current role, it was never one that I particularly considered or was actively looking for. I didn't even know it really existed until somebody sent me the role and I had a look at the job description. I was like, oh yeah, this is actually quite cool. And I can see myself doing it. It's in the health space. Let's give it a shot. And then, yeah, it worked out. So yeah, be open. And I think when it comes to people who are being overly negative, I wouldn't take it to heart, because honestly, it's their loss. If they're not willing to understand, then you've just got to let it go. Because otherwise it's like talking to a brick wall. Like you're not going to get anywhere with that, and you'll be wasting your time. The best thing you can do is prove them wrong. And I'm in a role I really enjoy, and I'm actively using everything that I learned in both of my degrees in my current role. So yeah, I see that as a massive win for me. And it doesn't matter what that random auntie says or what that random auntie thinks about your role and how long it's taking you to get a job. Like, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. You're responsible for taking yourself where you want to go. No one is going to do that for you. So yeah, you've just got to dig deep, find your why, and roll with it.
But that's a really good point, because just in our culture, there's a lot of be like uncles and aunties and parents. Sometimes they try to big up their children in front of the other ones, and yeah, that's a really good point there. And I think it's something which is more in the Asian community than the other communities more so. Would you say the fear of judgment in that aspect as well? Would you consider it those type of people as well, or would you only consider it those people who are working with you?
I think it's mainly I wouldn't even kind of reduce it down to just ethnic minorities. I think it's just a general narrative. I think with something like finance or medicine, you know that with medicine you can be a doctor, so that it's very easy to follow that line. And with finance, you can work in the banking sector, or you can be an accountant, or whatever it is. Like, they're very obvious professions. But when you have something like geography or history, or like a general humanities subject, it can be quite abstract. And I think that's what scares people, that so-called unknown. So when you don't know something, you just shy away from it, because that level of uncertainty kind of feeds into a bit of anxiety about where you will go in future. And I think that's what sort of Asian parents, I guess, are very hot on. They just want to know where you're going, that you've got your stability. And I think when it comes to that stability is not clear, then it's the very big question mark of, well, what are you going to do with your life? Where are you going to go? And I think because it's a very strong narrative within South Asian communities and nobody has deviated from that, they can't see any other possibilities. And I get where they're coming from. Like, I do understand that because having done a geography, I wasn't entirely sure where I was going to end up. I just kind of knew that these were my interests and I should probably just roll with it for now and see where I end up, which is very nerve-wracking, I think, for parents. And I'm somebody who values stability a lot, so I like to know where I'm going. And it's very hard when you can't really articulate that very clearly, because it's all up in the air. It's just about trying to reassure them, or just even engaging in conversation, saying like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. This person's done this. I've spoken to this person who works here, and this is what they said to me. I think that's how you have to navigate that difficult kind of interaction or barrier, I guess, between those people who genuinely care about you and kind of where you want to go. I think that lack of stability just comes from a lack of understanding. So the more research you do into the direction you want to go in, or the more kind of ideas you have about what you can do with your degree, it puts that anxiety to rest a little bit. Like it just makes them feel a little bit like, okay, she sounds like she knows what she's doing or where she wants to go, or like this is possible. Let's just let her give it a go, and if it works, it works.
You did mention about your dissertation, and within 2020-2021, which I got from my notes here, you completed your third year, including your dissertation, while the pandemic was going on, and you completed your degree and began your master's at UCL in 2021 in population health, as you mentioned, with majority of the learning just being like online. And I've looked through your dissertation. There's a lot of complex words, but it looked very like insightful. And what I wanted to ask is, what made you go for this particular career, for this particular route? And did you have it figured out? Was it planned? Because to me and to the people who look at your profile, I think they would think, oh, this is what Priyanka definitely wanted to do, because she speaks so passionately about this topic. So was it planned? Was it figured out? Or how was the journey like?
I'd say it was partly planned. I think I wanted a dissertation where I was still bringing my geography roots into the health space. My master's didn't really allow me to explore the relationship between geography and health. So I personally believe there were better masters suited to my interests, but I tried to make it work for me in the capacity that I was able to. So one of my favorite modules was urban health, and that was where I realized, or not realized, or just kind of had a better understanding of how geography and health link together in terms of the built environment and infrastructure. So with my dissertation on green spaces is a really big part of town planning and urban planning, and thinking about where we can, or how we can add more green spaces to our built environment. And I think in COVID, there was a very big appreciation of green spaces because there was literally nowhere else to go. Like, people were using green spaces for exercise, to regulate their emotions and support their mental health. So it was a big thing. And I think to a degree it still is, although I think we may have forgotten just how valuable green spaces are now that everything's gone back to normal. But I wanted to kind of explore the link between the built environment and health a little bit more in depth. And I think after that urban health module, I thought that I wanted to go down the town planning route and come from the angle of, using our built environment to support our mental and physical well-being. So I wanted a dissertation that would either kind of help me sort of propel myself in that career direction, or just generally provide a way to explain how geography and health are connected. And I thought trying to understand how people use green spaces, the barriers they face to using them, and how we can break those barriers to support local communities and their health. After that, I sort of started networking. Like after my master's, after I finished my dissertation, I spoke to loads of people who work in town planning, and I very quickly realised that it's not what I want to do. But they were very good conversations worth having, because they understood where I was coming from in terms of health being a very big part of the process of town planning. But I think I'm somebody who wanted to have an impact on a lot of people. And I think with town planning, there's certain people that always lose out. So if you think about gentrification and things like that, like that's all part of town planning. And it didn't sit right with me to go down that path and just have the same kind of winners and losers over and over again. Whereas with health, because health affects everybody, you're having that direct impact on just one person's life, but also even in my current role, we're working with people with lung conditions and trying to provide better research directions for them. Like the impact is just much bigger, and you can look at that on a very kind of zoomed in level where it's kind of on a one-to-one basis, or you can look at it from the bigger picture and you zoom out and see just how many people are affected by a specific health condition and the impact you can have on those people's lives. Whereas town planning, I just felt was very limited in delivering that impact. And so I just felt that when I started talking to people who worked in public health, I was like, oh, actually, this is what I want to do. And public health departments in local government also work within the built environment. So it just seemed like a better direction to go in. And I could see how I could use both of my degrees to still follow my interests and my passions to deliver a better outcome rather than going down the town planning route. And I think when I was aiming for local government initially, green spaces is a big part of local councils, and they're the ones that maintain them, etc. So again, it just fed in better to what I wanted to do. And I think I'm very glad that I took that time to really think about how my dissertation could help with future direction in terms of career. I have to say though, on my master's, I was the only one who did a very, very different dissertation to everybody else. Everyone else was looking at a very specific health condition like Parkinson's or asthma, or like a very kind of came from a very medical perspective. And I was there like, okay, let's do something a little bit different. Let's try and follow my interests and my passions to work for me rather than kind of just doing something else because everybody else is doing it.
How do you want to impact the world? That's a pretty big question, right? Think about it and write it in the comments. I am really enthusiastic to see your responses.
One thing I have noticed, and you've just touched on it just now, I've seen that you're insanely on LinkedIn. So I can see on whether that's posting long form posts or that's commenting on different people's posts or reacting, and just a bit in your messages as well. I think you're just a bit active on there as well. And I can see you are quite what I would say is established on LinkedIn. And you mentioned about networking. So is there power in networking for you?
Yes, I wouldn't be where I am without networking. It's been the biggest game changer in terms of my job hunt, but also really trying to understand the direction I want to go in terms of career, and also just what's out there. I think LinkedIn is not as corporate a platform as people think it is, which it means they are put off by kind of being on it, being active on it and using it. I think one of the problems I encountered was there weren't many people who work in public health that actually use LinkedIn. So it took a lot of work to find people or trying to get people to actually respond to messages to then set up a networking call in the end. And I think the public sector generally needs to be a little bit more active on it, because it would also serve them well in the long run. And I think I'm starting to see people use it a bit more within those sectors. I know the charity sector uses it quite a lot because they need to promote and market, all the stuff that they're doing. So it does work for them. I'm not someone who has a lot of social capital. I never have. So when it came to the job one, I was like, okay, I don't know anyone who works in public health or in local government. So where can I find these people? And LinkedIn seemed like the best place to do that. And you just start searching for people who work in the industry that you're trying to get into. You'll get a list of names and what they do. Just drop them a message. Just say, hi, I'm Priyanka. I'm interested in public health. I can see you working in Brent Council. Would you be willing to have a chat about your career journey and your current role, and if you whether you had any advice on how to get into that sector? And then you just usually they say yes, or they just don't respond. But when they do respond, you just set up a quick Teams call or Zoom or whatever, and you go into that conversation and live with, I guess, a form of an agenda. So what you want to get out of it. So some of the questions I frequently asked was, how did you get into public health, or how did you get into sound planning? What can you talk me through your career journey and what has helped you get to where you are? And then you'd ask about if they had any advice for somebody who is trying to enter that sector, and you talk a little bit about yourself in terms of your background, your interests, your why, essentially. And then at the end of every networking call, I always ask this question. I always ask, is there anyone else you think might be good to have a chat with? Because then, first of all, it saves you time. You don't have to keep looking for people and sending out messages. You've already got a name. Find that person on LinkedIn. Send them a message, say, oh, this person suggested I have a chat with you. Would you be open to speaking about your career journeys? The same kind of thing. And then you set up another networking call. So it just snowballs from there. And they're more likely to reply because someone's referred you to them, and then they probably know who that person is. So it becomes a lot easier. You'll get a higher response rate to your messages. So I wouldn't be where I am without networking. The reason why I have my current job is my old university professor, my personal tutor from Queen Mary. He saw that I was posting that I didn't have a job. So when he ran, one of his friends works at the charity I work for, and said, oh, we're recruiting for this role, he got in touch with me. He messaged me, sent me a message on LinkedIn saying, oh, there's this role. Are you interested? I can put you in touch with your would-be line manager. Then I set up a networking call with my would-be line manager, and we had a chat about the role, my experiences, and whether it would be worth me even putting an application in. And it worked. So if I hadn't been posting, my personal tutor would never have known that I was still looking for a role. And what posting does, especially with your face, with a picture, is you're kind of forcing your audience to remember who you are and what you're why you're there in the first place, because it means that when they see a job opportunity, they'll just send it to you straight away. So it just is keeping yourself in people's memory and reminding them that you're still here, that you're still looking for a role, that this is what you're interested in, this is what your experiences are. So I'd 100% recommend networking, especially if you don't have a social capital, because there is no better place to get access to a huge number of people in whatever sector you're looking to get into. And again, as somebody who is an ethnic minority and there is a lack of representation, and that's why you don't know anyone in those sectors, it's the easiest way to gain access to the right people who can help you. So yeah, I 100% recommend posting on LinkedIn. It's been a massive game changer, and I wouldn't be where I am without it.
That point really surprised me about social capital, because from looking at your profile, you look like someone who speaks to every single person. So that's really surprised me. Has going on LinkedIn and those network calls helped with that confidence to become more of a extrovert, or are you still more of a introvert in real life, and in these calls you're more of an extrovert?
I think that's something I'm learning about myself, because it's definitely surprised me. Like, even in my current role, a lot of what I do is manage relationships between patients and researchers. And I never used to enjoy talking to people. And it wasn't because I used to hate people. It was just because I don't know, I've always been an introvert. So I think what networking did help me to do, and I think part of that was because I was talking to people who were quite high up within their careers and in their professions. So they'd been working in public health for like 15 years or whatever. So because I was dealing with quite well-established people on a one-to-one basis for quite a while through networking, I think it really fed into this role, and I think it really helped me land it. I think because as an entry-level grad, you probably don't have experience with stakeholder management because you've not done it, and it's not had. And if you have done it, you've not done it to a certain, you haven't done it extensively. So with this role, with majority of it being about relationship management and nurturing those dynamics you have with people who are really top funders who are going to give the charity billions of pounds to do research, you don't want to get that wrong. So yeah, I think it's really helped me improve my communication. It's kind of made me, the thing is, every time I approach a networking call, I go in there with an open mind. I go in there with an agenda of what I want to get out of it. And I treat it a little bit like a semi-structured interview. So I'm just asking them questions and they kind of tell me whatever they want to tell me. And then off the back of what they tell me, I might have another question that I'd like to ask them. So it improved my confidence massively when it came to talking to people. And I never felt like I was talking to somebody who was better than me. I always went in there kind of just as a friendly chat, because again, LinkedIn is a place where you want to have that human connection. Nobody wants to be talking to a robot. I think a lot of what people post on LinkedIn can be quite rigid and not very true to somebody's story. So when I go into a networking call, I'm very open about, where I want to go, what my struggles are, and just really paying attention to what the other person is saying, and just treating them just like just being friendly, being nice, not kind of feeling like this very awkward, oh my God, you're like this manager of this company, whatever it is. You're there for an equal conversation, and you're speaking to them on the same level. I think that was they quite enjoy that, and it makes the conversation a lot easier to navigate. So I wouldn't be afraid of just being yourself when it comes to those networking calls. But yeah, it's been a very interesting journey from that point to my current role, and still trying to figure out, well, am I actually introverted still, or do I just do better when I'm talking on a one-to-one basis with somebody, which I kind of knew anyway. I prefer that because I find it easier to concentrate on one person and really try to understand who they are and what their interests are, and build that connection on a one-to-one basis. Whereas if you throw me in a room full of about 100 people, I'd just be standing there in the corner being like, this is just very overwhelming. And I don't think that's necessarily changed, but I think I've definitely grown in confidence in talking to people and even writing emails to people who are quite senior in an organization or, you know, external stakeholder management. All of that LinkedIn has really helped me with that. And I think it's also something you can put on your CV. You can also say you're building a personal brand, you're engaging with people, you're talking to people. You know, that's a lot of work in itself. It's a lot of copywriting. It's a lot of self-marketing, and that is a skill. Like in my current, like I'm not a fan of marketing. I don't enjoy it at all. But my current role, I do a lot of sort of newsletter writing, copywriting in terms of email writing to masses of people. Making sure your tone is right. Again, that's something my posts have really helped with, breaking those, or just being human. And I think that's what LinkedIn, we need to see more of on LinkedIn, is a lot of authenticity, a lot of what's actually the reality of somebody's life. And I think when I was posting about looking for a job and how that actually felt, what that journey was like for me, I think a lot of people resonated with that, because that is genuinely what it feels like. I hated looking for a job, I'm not going to lie. It was very, very hard. And I wouldn't wish anyone to be in that situation that I was in, because it takes a lot of resilience, a lot of determination to get through the day. Because when you have a job, it's like you wake up and you go to work. You just do it. Whereas when you're looking for a job, you don't have a job. So you have to find a reason to wake up every morning and get out of bed and, you know, go through your daily routine. And that's hard when you're looking for a job, because you're relying on your self-discipline to do that completely sort of alone. Whereas if you've got a job, you know, there is a reason for you to turn up to that role, or there's a reason to go to school, or there's a reason to turn up to that lecture. Whereas when you're looking for a job, there's no one to enforce that, if that makes sense. You're literally just relying on your own self, like your own steam, to get you through the day, and saying to yourself, if I don't apply for a job, then I'll never get a job. And you've just got to keep going, and you've got to really have that and build that level of self-discipline and resilience to navigate that journey. And that's probably why I wouldn't change it for anything in my 18 months, because I learned so much about myself through that. It was definitely a personal growth kind of year and a few months. So yeah, I mean, to anyone who is currently looking for a job, especially graduates, it takes time. It really does. On average, it takes between 18 months and 2 years to find a graduate job. It shouldn't take that long. It means the system is definitely broken. And yeah, that there's obviously a lot of work to be done to change that. But it is disheartening. It's horrible. And nobody wants to receive endless rejections. And it does get in your head. You get to a point where you just sort of give in and take whatever you get. But then you get stuck, and then it's very hard to then get out of that and actually go in the direction you wanted to originally go in. And I think when you're networking and posting on LinkedIn, it can make you feel like you're doing something about it. So it puts you back in the driver's seat. It puts you back in control. And actually, when you start posting about the stuff you actually care about in terms of the direction you want to take your career in, what it's doing is it's forcing you to think about your why again on a regular basis. So it's reinforcing your passion for whatever it is you want to do, and that's what can help you keep you going. So, I mean, the worst thing that can happen on LinkedIn is you get no reactions to your post, but that rarely ever happens. Or you will get somebody who doesn't reply to your direct message on LinkedIn. Again, that doesn't change your situation. It doesn't make it worse. And then you'll get people who do respond. You'll get people who do comment. And the more you start engaging with other people's content on LinkedIn, it builds up your own following, it builds up your own connections, it builds up your own confidence, and you've just got to start. And I think starting anything can be the most intimidating bit, like even in the context of going to the gym. a gym can be very intimidating to somebody who's never been before. Like, you've got all these massive machines and you're like, what do I do with them? Or if you're trying to lose weight, but you're seeing all these people with completely very fit and very active and got excessively giant muscles, like that's intimidating to somebody who's just about to start the gym. So anything you're about to start is going to be difficult. But if you can go over that and you can rationalize, okay, what have I got to lose? Like, genuinely, what have you got to lose? Nothing. Like, your situation is not going to get worse by posting on LinkedIn. It can only get better. And yeah, it will take time to cultivate that, but the returns are huge. And everyone who's messaged me over the last few months being like, how do I use LinkedIn? What do I do? And they tell me they're scared about putting themselves out there. I was scared to put myself out there. I'm an introvert. I don't like attention. But you've got to kick up enough of a fuss so people remember who you are, so people notice you. Because if you don't, you're just going to get lost in all the noise. And we live in a digital age now where there is a lot of noise out there on all kinds of platforms. And for you to stand out, you probably won't unless you're actively, being consistent with your posts, being consistent with the people you engage with. That's how you build a following. That's how you build connections. And that's essentially how you can land a job. And to speak to experts in personal branding. I didn't have the funds to do that while I was looking for a job, but since I've been working, I did invest in Indie Soul's marketing kind of personal branding package, where she did a massive audit of my LinkedIn and told me, oh, try changing this, do this, include this. And actually, now that I've done all those things, I can already see that it's making a really big difference. And I think even when you do get your job, still use LinkedIn, because you're not going to know where you need to tap into your network again. And also, you may have a job, but there are also other grads who still don't. So, just being mindful of what that being in that position felt like, and just if you're able to just lend a helping hand if you can, whether that's just a friendly chat to say, I get it, I understand, I hear you, your feelings are valid. You will get there. It makes a massive difference. As somebody who's gone through the process, having somebody say to you, it's going to be okay, makes a huge difference. And yeah, it's kind of all that's pretty much what I'd say about that, really. Networking changed my life, and I would strongly recommend it to anybody looking for a job, or even if you're not looking for a job, just give it a go, see what you get out of it.
I want your thoughts on this. There are over 5 billion social media users worldwide. We have discussed it helps with networking. However, what's the best platform for you? Would it be LinkedIn? Would it be Twitter? Or would it be a completely different platform? Let me know below.
Rejection. I heard about this quote by Sir Stephen Bartlett, and he's a incredible guy. He has these incredible podcasts, Diary of CEO, and I wanted to read this quote from him. And he said, you have to risk rejection to be accepted. You have to risk rejection to love. You have to if you're always avoiding risk, you're missing just out on life. To do it once more, you have to risk rejection to be accepted. You have to risk rejection to love. And if you are always avoiding risk, you're risking missing just on life. And that was by Stephen Bartlett. And the question I wanted to ask you, because you've touched on it a bit in the last 5 to 10 minutes on rejections, I wanted to ask, have you faced any rejections, and how have they got you to where you are now?
Okay, so I see this process happening over the last 6 years. So when I was doing my A-levels, I didn't get the grades I wanted, and I didn't get the uni that I wanted to get into either. So that was sort of the first, or maybe not the first, but the biggest moment of rejection that I found very, very difficult to navigate. I think it probably took about a year and a half to get over it, and to kind of just accept that, okay, I'm at Queen Mary. It's not where I originally wanted to be, but I'm here. So how can I use the time that I'm here? And, you know, my future self can benefit from the things that I do here in this moment. So that's when I started to really think about what Queen Mary has to offer. And I did a lot of their career programs. Like I did Q Taster, which is where they take you to sort of 3 different companies in 3 different industries, and you just have like a bit of a Q&A session with people who work there to try and understand what it's like to work in that sector, what it's like to work in that company, what they have on offer in terms of grad schemes or internships. I also did the student consultancy project, where I worked in a team of 5, and I was paired up with, I think it was a jewelry store for my project, and we worked on trying to improve their online sales. And the result of that project, it was that the work that we did increased their online sales by around 30%. So that was a positive outcome. But I also joined the netball team during my time at Queen Mary. It was also when I started volunteering with Amnesty. So I was doing all of these things to try and understand my career direction, where I wanted to go. I was meeting people from different courses, engaging in different conversations, being active, trying to see what's out there, there was a lot of self-development in that process. And I actually found that once I shifted my attention from this negative feeling of Queen Mary's is not kings, like this isn't where I want to be, and just being really angry about it, I actually decided to accept where I am and try to take myself where I wanted to go. And once I did that, I actually really started to enjoy my course as well, which was really, I felt at that point I was able to fully immerse myself into what Queen Mary had to offer, which was lovely. And then this pandemic hit. So in, I think, 2020, I was in my second year, and that's kind of where there was a massive shift to push everything online, and trying to navigate that for the first time. We were the first set of students that had to do it. So that meant seminars moved online, lectures moved online. You were just studying from home. And it was also a time where people were really shy to speak online. So it made having group discussions online really uncomfortable, which I think did have an impact on my learning, in the sense I didn't feel like I was able to have the conversations I would have loved to have with people about the stuff we were learning. And then we kind of, I did my dissertation, finished my 3rd year. Then I did my master's. And I think this is where I felt this was a very big kind of rejection, I personally felt, because the master's was something that I had fully invested in. It was what I really wanted to do, and I could see how it was going to take me where I wanted to go. And I got into UCL was one of the places I wanted to apply to, and I got into that. One of the modules they had was a statistics module, and I hate numbers. I don't like them. I'm terrible with numbers, and I haven't really touched any kind of maths since I was 16, because I'd been trying to avoid it, and I was successful until that point. And my master's was still done online, and I think that's kind of what I found really difficult about this module, was because I came from a social science background, a humanities background, so I had not worked with numbers for years, and suddenly there was this module that was just full of like numbers I had to get my head around, and I'm somebody who takes a long time with numbers, so it takes a long time to learn it, and the nature of a master's is you just don't have that time. So I felt like I couldn't give myself the time I knew I needed during that module to be able to fully understand it. So when it came to the assessment, I think think I got around 16% for that module, which is a fail for a master's, and you need to get 50% to pass. So I had to retake that, and I was gutted because it meant I had to do the process all over again, and I hated it. And it made me feel very annoyed, because I knew that if I had the time I knew I needed to give it, the outcome would have been very different. It was very frustrating. Having said that, it took around 2 weeks to get over. So from, the first massive rejection in my life that I faced, and it taking over a year and a half, to just 3 years later to something that felt just as devastating, it only took about 2 weeks to fully accept. I think it was very clear to me a lot of growth had happened over those years to get to this point. So then during the summer, I had to resit that module, and I taught myself statistics. I sat there every day carving through those lectures, through the practical examples that they gave, and the questions that we had to answer, and I taught it to myself. And for about 3 months, that's what I did, alongside my dissertation. I think I wrote my dissertation within 3 months. It was a very difficult time in terms, there was a lot happening. There was a lot to do in a very short space of time. But if I didn't pass the statistics module, I wouldn't have got a master's. I would have graduated with a diploma instead. And I think that wasn't what I wanted. And I think that's what kind of kept me going, was that you did not do this. You signed up to this course for a diploma. You signed up for a master's. That was the initial plan. And that's no reason why this can't still be a possibility. So I taught myself statistics for 3 months, and then I passed it. But when you do a resit, it's capped. So I asked my lecturer, if it wasn't capped, what would have I actually got? And he said 70%. And it took about 3 days for that to fully sink in. It was a little bit annoying that it wasn't going to be part of my, overall outcome of the degree, but actually on a much more personal level, I could do numbers. Like I wasn't scared of it anymore. I didn't feel overwhelmed by them, because I put in that time. I learned it. I taught it to myself, and that's probably the biggest takeaway from my masters, is that I had no reason to be scared of numbers anymore. It was possible. I can work with numbers. I can do math. It wasn't intimidating anymore. And in the end, it didn't matter that I got a master's. All that mattered to me was that I passed that statistics module, because it just meant so much. You are going, and then after I finished my master's, obviously the next challenge was looking for a job, and where I probably applied to at least 800 over those 18 months, and received countless rejections. Rejection is part of the process for everything, whether that's in relationships, whether that's in the working world, as a student, whatever it is, you're going to face rejection. It is a part of life. But with time, you'll learn how to build that resilience to then navigate that rejection. And like I said, the very first time I felt like a devastating rejection was when I didn't get into the uni I wanted to. And it took over a year and a half to get over that. But then, equally, a few years down the line, it was down to 2 weeks it just took a few weeks to overcome that. So every time this happens, it will take less and less time to get over, because you would have put in place the perspectives, the new way of approaching, the new way of looking at something, to then navigate that level of rejection. I think it's about, you have to feel it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not going to hurt when you get rejected. Of course it will. That's the nature of being going through a rejection. Feel it, but then acknowledge it, and then learn from it. So a classic example when I was looking for a job was, there was somebody who worked in a town planning organisation,
and they had a role opening, and I applied, and I connected with somebody who worked there, and we connected after I'd applied, just to have a chat about the general town planning sector and what that involved. And I also told her that I didn't get accepted for interview for that role. So she had a look at my written application, and she said there was absolutely nothing wrong with your personal statement that you wrote for that role. It was just there were other applicants who had better experience related to what we wanted. So what that tells me, yes, I was rejected, but actually it meant that what I was writing wasn't wrong. It was just about finding an opportunity that matched my experience. So at the end of the day, that rejection wasn't a personal rejection. It was just a rejection of the application. And that's what you've got to remember as a job seeker, is they're not rejecting who you are, they're rejecting the application. And you're not the application, if that makes sense. You're so much more than your application, so much more than your degree. You're a human being. There's so much to that. So yeah, it's just finding the silver lining within that rejection. And if I'd gotten any of those jobs I'd applied for, I wouldn't have realized what I wanted to do in my current role. I would never have carved out my newfound mission, for example, in trying to diversify the health space and the health research. So obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing in that aspect, because you can see how everything that you went through is leading up to where you are now. But in the moment, it can be really hard to see the outcome. But I think even as a job seeker, that's something that you can focus on, right? So when you hear that, yes, imagining how that would feel can help you with that motivation to build that self-discipline to keep you going. So, yeah.
Rejection is needed to experience success. It might not feel like it just at this moment, but if you keep going, you will succeed. Let's resume.
The world doesn't stop turning because you've failed something. Nothing will necessarily happen to you if you fail something. Like, people fail things all the time, and that's okay. Try to feel that rejection, embody it, feel angry about it, feel frustrated. It's normal, and I think it's important to acknowledge how you feel after a rejection, rather than trying to ignore it, because it will surface up later on and won't do you or anyone else any good. So yeah, acknowledge how you feel, but then think about what you can do about it. What are the next steps? So if you failed a module, okay, what can we do about this? How can we move forward? Is it that we need to start finding people who did really well in the module, speak to them and about the things that you don't understand? Is it that we put in more time to teach ourselves this module to try and navigate our way through it? I think it's important to be practical and be honest with yourself. If you failed something because you weren't able to give it the time that you were supposed to give it, then that's where you start off. Is it if you've just weren't paying attention in lectures for that module? Well, pay attention in your lectures for the next module you go through. There is always a learning that you can take away from a failure. And one of the biggest failures I had was not getting into King's, and it felt devastating. But actually, Queen Mary's course was just so much better. If I got into King's, I would never have been able to explore health geographies, and I would never have realised that health is the direction I wanted to go in. So my future would have looked so different. And when things don't happen, sometimes they happen for a reason. When not getting what you want can turn out to be a really positive thing, like it was in my case about my where I ended up studying. So sometimes it's better to zoom out, see the bigger picture, and just be honest with yourself, out yourself. If it's your fault, fix it, because you're in a position to fix it. And there's no point in repeating the same behaviors and expecting a different outcome, because you're not going to get that. So
be honest with yourself, really feel that rejection, and just take a moment to step back and see the bigger picture and how much of a difference this is really going to make in the grand scheme of things. Like, I could have ended up at King's, but I ended up at Queen Mary. Still got a degree. I still have a degree in geography. There's so much good that came out of it. I've learned so much on my course. I really enjoyed my modules. I probably wouldn't have if I was at King's. Like, there's so much that if you fail something, see it as an opportunity. And the quicker you can get your head around that, the better. Like, looking back at and seeing that it took me 1.5 years to get over a rejection, I'm just like, why did it take so long? It should not have taken that long. And actually, that was if I had got over it a lot sooner, then I could have just enjoyed where I was a lot more and like kept fully immersing myself in what my situation had to offer me, and then what I could do to utilize that. So yeah, I think that's really important in terms of networking. Think about your why. Why do you want to go into this career? Why do you want to go in this role? Why do you want to go work in that industry? Why do you want to work at that company? Just dig deep and really think about your purpose, where you want to go, because that's how you will be able to use LinkedIn to your advantage. Then I'd recommend posting. Tell the world about your experiences. Tell the world about your why. Tell them, what you want to do, where you want to go, who you'd like to speak to. If you're looking to just have friendly chats with other grads, say that I'm looking to, if you're a grad and you're in the same position, let's reach out, let's have a chat, because you can just build up a nice community of people who are in the same boat, and you can start supporting each other, and that's a really positive thing. Then obviously start networking with people. So find people who work in public health, or for me it was public health, for you it might be something completely different. Do a LinkedIn search, see what kind of roles these people are in, do a bit of research into that industry, see what companies are within that sector, start following their pages on LinkedIn, start following people who work for those companies, who work in those roles, start commenting on their posts, keep a track of these people. What are they up to? What's the latest developments in that sector? What are your thoughts on this? Respond to people's comments. And if you're looking to break into that sector, try and figure out what they're struggling with, and then put yourself in a position where you have a solution to that problem, because that's how you sell yourself to that company. If they're struggling to market their new product, and you want to go into marketing, and you've done a bit of marketing yourself in different ways, or you're building your personal brand, say that as a LinkedIn post. Say that, this is something that this industry is struggling with. This is how I can help you. This is why I think I should be in this role. This is how I think. This is why this industry is the right place for me to be. Because if someone's got a problem, the best way to kind of make those connections or get into that space is to find a solution. So for me, for example, my unique selling point would be looking at health issues in a geographical lens. So trying to understand why these health conditions vary, or people's experiences vary so much depending on where they live. So something like the postcode lottery, or quality of care is so different from the north and south, and I can understand that because I've studied geography, because I understand the ins and outs of the healthcare system, because I have a master's in population health. So it's about building and trying to find those connections. So research is key when it comes to self-branding and trying to market yourself to these companies and to the right industry. I'd also follow people who have really good personal brands. So there are a few out there on LinkedIn who I think post really good content and very relatable content, which I think it makes you laugh, puts a smile on your face. They do a good job. You can use their templates. You can use the same kind of tone and the same kind of language to apply to your posts as well. And already it means that they're likely to do quite well, because somebody else has done it and tried it and it's working. So in a way, it's likely to do the same for you. And then last thing, when it comes to networking, just set up networking calls with people. Just message them, asking for advice, being genuinely interested in their career journey. Go into those networking calls with a few questions you'd like to ask them, a few takeaways. Then at the end, always ask them if there's anyone else they think is worth speaking to, because it will save you time. And also it builds up your credibility. They're more likely to respond, and the conversations you'll have will probably be a lot more richer because you've just spoken to somebody that person knows. So it gives you a little bit more, credibility, I guess. And it shows that you're being proactive. And you can put all of that on LinkedIn. You can say, you can put it down as like marketing experience in terms of building a personal brand. And, you've got practice in speaking to external stakeholders and building relationships with, like people who work in different industries, like whatever it is, that is still relevant experience. And even on your CV, you can put a link to your LinkedIn profile. So whatever job application you send out, people can click on that link and they'll go straight to your LinkedIn profile. So your digital CV essentially, and they can see what you're up to. And I think when you post, it makes you more visible. So people know that, you're not just kind of saying stuff, you're actually doing what you're saying that you do. Again, it builds credibility. So I think that's kind of what I'd say.
Priyanka, I want to say thank you just for this, because I really wanted you on as a guest because of your focus on the environment and your care and passion to protecting it. And I really, really wanted you on. And I really do like what you're doing. I look at your LinkedIn lots, and there's always something I learn. If it's a finding, if it's a stat, if it's something which I never knew before, there's always something which I take out from it. And I always try to comment, and I will keep supporting like as well. And also, this is like the first female guest on Desire to Inspire podcast. So history has been made there, and I'm really grateful for you to be the first one there.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. I mean, we probably wouldn't have even connected without LinkedIn in itself. So I think that's a testament to say just how far it can take you. And this is definitely my first podcast, so it's been an experience in itself, and I'll definitely be writing a post about it. So look out for that one. But glad to be here, and I'm glad to be part of something that inspires people moving forward. So thank you for having me.
Massive thank you for all of you for listening. I hope you took great value from this episode. Episode 3 done. Last thing left to say is shoot your shot.